Humans were sent to a planet designed to kill, a Class-15 Deathworld. Against all odds, they survived, adapted, and turned it into their proving ground. The storms, the predators, the impossible conditions, nothing could stop them. Subscribe to HFY Sci-Fi now to witness more epic tales of human courage and unstoppable power. The message arrived without warning, sealed under the highest level of galactic security. It was not an invitation. It was a quiet test. The Galactic Council had discovered a planet classified as a Class-15 Deathworld, a place where gravity crushed bones, storms ripped mountains apart, and life itself existed only through constant violence. No known species had ever survived longer than a few minutes on such a world. Probes failed, drones vanished, and even long-range scans were unstable. The Council needed explorers, but no civilization was willing to volunteer. For most species, the idea of stepping onto a death world was madness. Their bodies were fragile. Their minds evolved for safety, not chaos. Records showed that even military elites refused to consider it. Entire empires declined the request in silence. Others sent polite refusals. Some never responded at all. The Council grew desperate. The planet held rare resources and strategic value. But more than that, it was a mystery. And mysteries made the galaxy uneasy. Then, the Council sent the file to humanity. Humans were still considered young by galactic standards. Their technology was advanced but not dominant. Their bodies were dense, their instincts unpredictable, and their homeworld already rated dangerously high on the survival scale. Still, no one expected what happened next. Instead of fear, there was curiosity. Instead of refusal, there were questions. Human analysts studied the data. Extreme gravity, unstable tectonics, hyper-aggressive wildlife, lethal atmosphere cycles, and violent electromagnetic storms. To the Council's surprise, human scientists did not ask why the mission was necessary. They asked how soon they could leave. Within days, Earth responded. Humanity accepted the mission. The decision confused the galaxy. Some believed humans misunderstood the danger. Others thought it was a political move, a bluff meant to gain influence. But those who knew humanity better felt a quiet sense of dread. Humans had a long history of entering places they were told would kill them, and surviving out of stubbornness alone. Their history was filled with frozen wastelands, poisoned zones, deep oceans, and battlefields where logic said no one should live. Yet humans adapted, endured, and stayed. Behind closed doors, the Council debated canceling the mission. Sending humans felt wrong, almost cruel. But humanity insisted. They signed full liability waivers, rejected rescue guarantees, and accepted total mission risk. One Council member asked a human representative why they were willing to go. The answer was simple: because someone has to find out. Preparations began immediately. The human expedition was small, no massive armada, no grand display, just a compact fleet designed for endurance, not elegance. Engineers reinforced hulls, scientists redesigned survival suits, and soldiers trained for environments that defied known physics. There was no panic, no dramatic speeches, only quiet focus, as if humanity had done this before. As launch day approached, galactic media finally noticed. Broadcasts spread across star systems. Commentators predicted total failure. Analysts estimated survival time in minutes. Some openly accused the Council of using humans as expendable test subjects. But humanity did not protest. They did not boast. They simply boarded their ships. When the fleet departed, the Council chamber fell silent. No one celebrated. No one expected success. The mission was logged as exploratory only, with minimal expectations. But deep down, something unsettled them. Humans had not acted like a species walking toward death. They acted like professionals heading to difficult work. As the ships entered hyperspace, sensors recorded human crew activity, routine checks, casual conversations, even laughter. This disturbed the observers more than fear would have. Fear was expected. Calm was not. One alien scientist quietly noted that humans showed the same behavior pattern seen before natural disasters on their own world. Not denial, but acceptance followed by action. The mission no one else would take had begun, not because humans were immune to danger, but because they had learned to live alongside it. And as the fleet vanished into the dark, the galaxy realized something too late. This mission was not about whether humans could survive a death world. It was about what would happen if they did. As the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace, the planet filled every screen. It was massive, dark, and wrapped in violent storms that flashed like constant lightning scars. Long-range scans immediately began to fail, sensors overloaded, signals bent and broke, and even basic readings came back distorted. Alien observers watching from safe distances felt a deep unease. This was not just a dangerous world. It was a world that fought observation itself. Gravity readings shocked even human scientists. The pull was nearly double what most species could survive. Landing calculations had to be rewritten in real time. One mistake would turn a ship into a falling weapon. The atmosphere was thick and unstable, filled with corrosive gases that shifted composition without warning. Breathing masks would not be enough. Every second on the surface would be a calculated risk. From orbit, the surface looked alive. Continents moved slowly, not because of wind, but because the ground itself was unstable. Massive tectonic plates slid against each other constantly, causing endless earthquakes. Mountains collapsed and rebuilt themselves over time. Oceans boiled near volcanic fault lines, and entire regions vanished beneath sudden land shifts. This was a planet that never rested. Storm systems covered most of the surface, not gentle weather, but planet-wide tempests. Winds strong enough to strip metal, rain that burned exposed surfaces, and electromagnetic pulses that could shut down unprotected technology. These storms did not follow patterns. They appeared suddenly and disappeared just as fast, making long-term predictions nearly impossible. Then there was the life. Biological scans detected movement everywhere. Massive heat signatures beneath the surface, fast-moving shapes across the plains, and airborne entities within storm clouds. Life on this planet had evolved not just to survive, but to dominate. Predators were heavily armored, aggressive, and highly territorial. Some hunted alone, others in coordinated packs. Even plant-like organisms showed defensive responses, releasing toxins or snapping shut when disturbed. Council experts watching the data concluded the same thing. This world was designed to kill anything that arrived unprepared. Even its smallest organisms were lethal to foreign biology. Spores could melt tissue. Microorganisms attacked equipment seals, and parasites adapted within hours. This was not accidental danger. It was total environmental hostility. Human crews studied the information in silence. No panic, no dramatic reactions. They adjusted plans, reinforced landing zones, modified suits with layered protection, and recalculated exposure times. Instead of asking if landing was possible, they focused on how to make it possible. As the fleet moved closer, communication interference increased, static-filled channels, and visual feeds flickered. Alien observers expected humans to delay or retreat, but the fleet held course. Landing craft separated smoothly, entering the atmosphere at precise angles to counter gravity and wind shear. Several probes were lost instantly, torn apart by storms or crushed before reaching the surface. The humans noted the losses and continued. Inside the landing craft, pressure pushed against the hull. Alarms sounded constantly. Gravity pressed crew members into their seats, making movement difficult. Yet voices remained calm. Checklists were followed, systems were adjusted. This was not bravery fueled by ignorance. It was discipline built through experience. The first visual contact with the surface confirmed every warning. The ground cracked and shifted beneath landing thrusters. Storms roared nearby, and distant shapes moved through dust clouds, watching, waiting. The planet did not feel empty. It felt aware, as if something ancient and powerful was observing the intruders. When the landing craft finally touched down, the impact was brutal. Shockwaves traveled through the hull, stabilizers struggled to hold position, and the ground beneath began to fracture. For several long seconds, no one spoke. Then, systems stabilized, pressure equalized, and the craft remained upright. Across the galaxy, observers held their breath. Humans had arrived on a Class-15 Deathworld, a place no species had ever truly set foot on. And instead of immediate destruction, there was silence. Not safety, not victory, just a pause, as if the planet itself was deciding what to do next. The world designed to kill had met something unfamiliar. Not fearless explorers, but survivors trained by a dangerous home of their own. And for the first time in its long, violent history, the Deathworld faced a species that did not run, did not freeze, and did not beg for mercy. It simply prepared to endure. The landing craft doors opened slowly, releasing a hiss of pressurized air into the alien sky. Dust and debris swirled violently. Yet humans stepped out carefully, each movement precise, suits glowing softly under the storm-lit clouds, sensors whirring to scan everything around them. The ground trembled beneath their boots, fissures opening and closing as if the planet was breathing. And yet they moved forward, unshaken, observing, recording, adapting. The first steps were more than physical. They were a test of nerve. Every pulse of wind could tear a human apart. Every shadow might hide a predator. Yet the crew worked systematically, erecting temporary shields, laying stabilizers, and activating long-range monitoring devices. Alien scientists watching from orbit were stunned. No other species had lasted a full hour under such conditions. Humans were functioning almost normally, as if danger itself was an expected companion. Initial scans revealed more than expected. Enormous creatures moved across distant plains, some seemingly unaware of the newcomers, others adjusting their paths to circle closer. Volcanoes erupted at random intervals, clouds of ash mixing with toxic rains, rivers boiled where they met geothermal vents. Yet humans moved steadily, marking safe zones, testing air quality, and deploying automated observation drones that were quickly torn apart by sudden storms or lightning strikes, each loss recorded and analyzed for adaptation. Communication within the team was calm, efficient, every word measured, not panic, not bravado. Humans coordinated in ways that showed practice in chaos. One team monitored environmental readings. Another secured energy sources, while the rest began exploring terrain that was shifting and unstable. Alien analysts in orbit whispered that this should have been impossible, that these humans were defying everything the Deathworld could throw at them. Predators tested them almost immediately. Massive armored beasts with multiple limbs and razor-like appendages approached cautiously, then charged in rapid bursts. Humans did not flee. They did not panic. They deployed energy barriers, coordinated fire teams, and created traps using the environment itself. Some predators were forced to retreat. Others were contained temporarily. The humans moved as one organism, understanding the threats instinctively, adapting to each new attack with speed and precision. Within hours, the team had established a functional base, small but secure, capable of sustaining life despite the violent conditions. Energy shields hummed continuously. Automated systems scanned the surroundings, and reinforced structures held against earthquakes and wind shear. Alien monitors, who had assumed failure within minutes, could hardly believe what they were seeing. This was not mere survival. It was dominance in miniature, a species asserting itself in the heart of absolute hostility. Scientists began to take samples carefully. Rocks that melted under high heat, plants that released corrosive toxins when touched, microbial life that ate through metal. Humans cataloged everything, noting weaknesses and potential uses. Even in this lethal environment, their curiosity was methodical, almost clinical. They did not waste effort on panic, only on solutions. Every failure became data. Every danger became an experiment. As the first night fell, the planet's storms intensified, lightning striking close to their temporary shelters, winds bending structures almost to breaking. Yet humans continued their work under the glow of artificial lights, mapping terrain, securing supplies, and ensuring all systems remained operational. One crew member laughed softly as a small predator tried to breach their perimeter and was repelled with a carefully calculated maneuver. That laugh echoed across the base, a signal of resilience that the planet had never encountered. For the alien observers, the most remarkable fact was not the humans' technology, but their mindset. They were calm, adaptive, fearless, yet not reckless. Their brains constantly analyzing, their bodies enduring extremes, and their teamwork seamless under pressure that would kill most species instantly. The Council had expected casualties, chaos, perhaps a heroic failure, but what they witnessed instead was efficiency, intelligence, and courage woven together in real time. By the end of the first cycle, humans had not only survived, they had organized, learned, and adapted. The base stood, the crew was intact, and the Deathworld, which had destroyed all previous attempts at contact, had met its match. Every alien watching had to accept the shocking truth. These humans did not just survive danger, they redefined it. And for the first time, the galaxy began to question whether this Class-15 Deathworld would ever be the same again. The planet did not wait long to challenge its new inhabitants. Massive predators emerged from the shadows, creatures unlike anything cataloged before, some with armored exoskeletons, others with rapid limbs that could smash through reinforced barriers. The humans had expected danger, but the sheer intelligence of the attacks surprised even them. Ambushes, feints, coordinated strikes, these were not mindless beasts. They were evolved killers testing the limits of the intruders. The first encounter was terrifying. A quadrupedal predator with glowing mandibles charged a sensor tower, smashing it to pieces before retreating. Humans responded instantly, activating energy shields, directing controlled bursts of plasma, and luring the creature into traps that exploited its aggression. It took minutes of careful maneuvering, but the predator eventually withdrew. And the crew recorded every movement, every pattern, knowing that observation was their strongest weapon. Attacks became frequent. Sometimes multiple predators coordinated, circling from different directions, using the planet's unstable terrain to their advantage. Landslides were triggered, toxic spore clouds released, and sudden geysers erupted. Yet humans adapted in real time. Barriers were repositioned. Observation drones flew higher and faster. And countermeasures were devised on the spot. Alien observers were dumbfounded. No species had ever turned the Deathworld's environment into an advantage so quickly. Instead of fear, humans felt a strange respect for the predators. They studied them, noting weaknesses, timing movements, and predicting behavior. Each attack became a lesson, each retreat an opportunity. They realized survival was not just about defense, but about learning, understanding, and gradually dominating without destroying entirely. The team documented everything meticulously, ensuring that even in chaos, knowledge was gained. Some predators were captured, not killed. Using reinforced containment units and sedative tech, humans examined them closely, noting physiology, intelligence, and adaptability. Their data suggested that these creatures could teach humans how to move, how to predict environmental shifts, and even how to survive longer on the Deathworld. Every capture added to human understanding, and slowly, the planet began to shift from a place of pure threat to a field of study. The planet itself seemed to react. Landslides became more cautious, storms shifted around the base, as if testing new strategies. Humans did not hesitate. They deployed sensors to monitor tectonic shifts, chemical releases, and even electromagnetic surges. Using the Deathworld's attacks to improve shields, structures, and protocols, every challenge became a step toward turning the world's hostility into a controlled environment. Night brought new dangers. Predators adapted to darkness, some ambushing from above, others digging through unstable ground. Yet the humans moved with steady lights, thermal vision, and silent communication. Coordinated in squads, never panicking, never faltering. They even set up decoys, luring predators into harmless areas while mapping escape routes. The planet's lethal wildlife became a live simulation for strategy and endurance. Weeks passed, and humans started noticing patterns. Predators preferred certain paths, avoided certain areas, and even responded predictably to human maneuvers. Small victories accumulated, and confidence grew. But the team never underestimated the planet. Every success was tempered with caution. They knew the Deathworld had created these challenges over millions of years, and one mistake could still cost lives instantly. Alien observers began discussing the implications, a species that could not only survive but study and exploit predator behavior. On a Class-15 Deathworld posed threats and possibilities unimaginable. Humans were not just surviving. They were learning, adapting, and slowly establishing dominance through intelligence and teamwork. The predators were formidable, but humans were patient, calculating, and relentless. By the end of this phase, humans had not only defended their base successfully, but had also mapped predator territories, identified behavioral patterns, and established controlled zones. The planet's apex hunters had learned caution, and for the first time, a Deathworld was not entirely in control. Humans had claimed a foothold, turning the very danger that should have ended them into a proving ground, a deadly classroom where survival meant understanding, adaptation, and relentless observation. Humans began to explore the Deathworld beyond the immediate safety of their base. Every step was calculated, yet bold. They moved across cracked plains, climbed unstable ridges, and crossed boiling rivers with equipment designed to withstand extremes. Each expedition gathered data on terrain, atmospheric conditions, and the violent ecology that surrounded them. The planet, which had resisted all previous intrusions, now faced a species that did not just survive. It adapted. Resource gathering became a priority, not just for survival, but to improve their position. Minerals were extracted carefully from volcanic fissures, some used to reinforce the base, others to test new alloys that could resist corrosive rains. Native plants, though toxic and unpredictable, were studied for medicinal properties. Certain spores could be neutralized and used as power sources. Humans turned deadly threats into usable materials, showing a form of ingenuity that the planet had never encountered. Small-scale engineering projects began to reshape the immediate environment. Humans stabilized cliffs prone to collapse, redirected small lava flows into channels for energy generation, and created controlled shelters that could withstand even sudden storms. Every modification was subtle but deliberate. It did not destroy the planet, but it forced the Deathworld to bend slightly to human will. Alien observers were shocked. No species had ever altered such a hostile environment without complete failure. Predators and hazards continued to challenge humans, but they were increasingly predictable. Humans used their knowledge of patterns to avoid ambushes, design traps, and establish safe paths. Some of the most aggressive creatures were now deterred from approaching critical zones. Humans were not killing recklessly, but asserting dominance through understanding and strategic presence. The Deathworld's natural defenses were being neutralized not by brute force, but by intellect and adaptability. Over time, small energy grids extended beyond the base, powering mobile units and research stations. Humans were not only surviving, they were thriving. Their presence began affecting local ecosystems. Some predator populations retreated. Smaller creatures adapted to new safe zones. Even the volatile weather systems seemed to respond to stabilized areas. The Deathworld's chaos was being tamed in pockets. Each step human progress advanced. The planet adjusted reluctantly, like an opponent realizing it could be outmatched. Humans also experimented with long-term habitation strategies. They created modular habitats, capable of shifting and reinforcing themselves in response to earthquakes and storms. Each module was equipped with automated monitoring and repair systems. This allowed humans to move farther into dangerous regions without risk. Every incursion expanded their understanding of the planet's limits, and the Deathworld, which had once been untouchable, was slowly being mapped, measured, and mitigated. Scientific teams studied the planet's extreme geology, noting that tectonic shifts were not random, but followed deep-seated energy currents. Humans built sensors to monitor and predict eruptions, quakes, and electromagnetic surges. They created algorithms to anticipate environmental events before they occurred. The Deathworld's unpredictability became slightly predictable, turning moments of potential death into opportunities for research and expansion. Even flora and microbial life were now analyzed in depth. Humans discovered that certain plant spores could be neutralized and even used as temporary shelter. Bacteria previously deadly to probes could be harvested for biochemical energy. What had been lethal for every other species became a resource through understanding. Humans were converting the planet's dangers into tools, a remarkable display of adaptation and ingenuity that began reshaping the Deathworld's ecology in subtle ways. With every success, confidence grew, and humans extended their operations. The base was no longer an isolated point of survival, but a hub from which they could safely interact with the environment, map terrain, and prepare for future expansion. Alien observers grew anxious. This was no longer a mission of survival. It was an operation of transformation. The humans were rewriting what it meant to exist on a Class-15 Deathworld. By the end of this phase, the planet was showing signs of strain. Small systems were destabilized under human influence. Predators were shifting territories. Weather patterns altered near human installations, and ecosystems that had remained stable for millennia were being adjusted without violence. Humans had learned to turn hostility into opportunity, survival into control, and observation into power. The Deathworld, which had been an unchallenged master of life and death, was beginning to bend under human hands. The Deathworld, which had for millennia ruled everything on its surface, began to respond in ways humans had not expected. Minor earthquakes grew into violent tremors, storms intensified beyond normal patterns, and geothermal activity surged unpredictably. The humans observed this not with fear, but with calculated attention, their sensors recording every shift, every tremor, every lightning strike, understanding that the planet itself was struggling under new pressures. It became clear that human activity, though careful and deliberate, was destabilizing natural systems. Small mining operations altered underground pressure. Habitat construction changed wind flow, and controlled water diversion shifted rivers. Predators responded as if confused, changing hunting patterns, moving to areas humans had not yet monitored, and sometimes abandoning their territories entirely. The death world was showing the first signs of stress ever recorded. Humans adapted quickly, not to avoid danger, but to use it. They built flexible shelters capable of withstanding sudden quakes, rerouted storms with temporary shielding, and even used geothermal surges as energy sources. Every reaction was measured and precise, turning what had been lethal chaos into controlled variables. The planet, in effect, was being forced into an environment engineered to accommodate human survival. Alien observers debated what they were seeing. The planet's violent systems, once predictable only to its own evolved species, were being rewritten in response to human interference. It was not mere survival anymore. It was domination through understanding. Humans had learned the planet's weak points, how to exploit energy flows, redirect hazardous terrain, and manipulate predator behavior without complete annihilation. The death world was being pressured to accommodate life forms that were never supposed to thrive there. Predators became disoriented, their hunting cycles disrupted. Some went extinct locally, others migrated into less dangerous areas. Humans documented every change, understanding that the balance of life on the planet was now in their hands. Storms no longer struck randomly near human installations. Instead, they were partially redirected by shield networks. And even volcanic activity could be anticipated and used for energy capture. The humans were not conquering the planet through force, but through precision, planning, and adaptation. Some environmental shifts were alarming. Tectonic plates that had remained stable for centuries began to fracture, creating massive fissures. New rivers formed overnight, and certain regions became uninhabitable even for humans temporarily. Yet, they used these events as research opportunities. Sending drones into hazardous zones, testing survival protocols, and learning more about the planet's limits than any species ever had. The death world's attempt to reclaim dominance was meeting a strategy it could not outmatch. Humans began to expand infrastructure in response. Modular stations were moved closer to resource-rich zones, supply lines extended through previously impossible terrain, and predator deterrents were implemented based on observed behavior patterns. It was no longer a fight for survival, it was a campaign of transformation. The planet was responding violently, but humans responded faster, smarter, and more efficiently, establishing an ecosystem where human activity dictated safety and access. Alien scientists in orbit and across nearby systems expressed astonishment. No one had ever anticipated that a species could survive long enough to systematically alter a Class-15 Deathworld. The planet, in effect, was being rewritten, its natural order disrupted, not by direct combat, but by the human's ability to observe, adapt, and manipulate. Every move was calculated to survive and turn lethal hazards into usable resources. The death world was resisting, but its resistance was now measurable and counterable. By the end of this phase, the death world was no longer entirely in control. Storms, predators, and geological activity were moderated by human intervention. Ecosystems shifted to accommodate the human presence, and the planet's own violent tendencies were channeled into predictable forms. Humans had turned hostility into opportunity, learning from every attack and every quake. And in doing so, the death world had begun to yield to a species that had arrived to explore, not to perish. The realization spread quietly among human crews that they were no longer just surviving. They were reshaping a world that had never been shaped before. The death world's immense power had met intelligence, patience, and adaptability. And slowly, the galaxy would come to understand that this planet, which had killed every other species that touched it, had never faced an adversary quite like humanity. News of human success on the death world began to spread slowly across the galaxy. Initially through intercepted communications and later through carefully monitored reports, the Galactic Council held emergency sessions, debating how such a young species could survive, adapt, and even manipulate a Class-15 Deathworld. Their calculations had predicted total annihilation within days. Yet humans were not only alive, they were thriving, establishing outposts and gathering resources as if the planet itself were a cooperative partner. Alien civilizations, previously confident that such a planet could never be tamed, began to take notice. Spies and researchers quietly studied the humans' technology and methods. Reports circulated of disciplined teams analyzing predators, controlling environmental hazards, and even redirecting volcanic flows for energy. Whispers of disbelief became discussions. Discussions became concern, and concern grew into fear. The idea that humans could alter a planet designed to kill was both fascinating and terrifying. The humans, meanwhile, continued their work without fanfare. They were expanding base networks, stabilizing new regions, and exploring deeper into hazardous zones. Every success brought new data, which was analyzed and applied almost immediately. Predators had begun to avoid human zones. Storms shifted in response to shielding technology, and previously unstable terrain was now traversable thanks to modular engineering. Humans had effectively begun to rewrite the rules of the Deathworld. Alien observers struggled to comprehend the human approach. Most species relied on brute strength, overwhelming firepower, or avoidance to survive in hostile environments. Humans relied on intelligence, adaptation, and meticulous observation. They learned from failure, responded faster than predicted, and continually improved their position. The Deathworld's natural defenses, which had ended every other expedition, were now predictable and partially controlled, a feat no one had believed possible. The Galactic Council debated intervention, but any attempt to remove humans would be impossible without full-scale war, and the Council feared the consequences. Humans had proven themselves capable of surviving under conditions that even elite species could not, and now their influence extended beyond mere survival. They were actively reshaping the planet. The implications for strategy, colonization, and galactic power were enormous, causing unease in even the most advanced civilizations. Meanwhile, humans were sending back reports of what they had achieved, not in boastful tones, but in clinical detail. Every predator encounter, every storm mitigation, every geological anomaly was documented. Strategies for survival and adaptation were shared among team members, creating a knowledge network that expanded exponentially. The planet itself had become a live laboratory, and humans were learning faster than the Deathworld could respond. Some alien species grew desperate, sending reconnaissance fleets to observe human activity directly, hoping to find weaknesses. Yet every attempt was met with precise countermeasures. Humans had anticipated almost every possible hazard, using sensors, drones, and predictive algorithms to ensure safety. Even the most aggressive predator migrations were monitored and contained, and storms were partially redirected with localized shielding. Humans were no longer passive explorers. They were managers of chaos, turning lethal environmental forces into resources and tactical advantages. Reports of humans' efficiency caused a ripple of fear. Councils debated the possibility of humans achieving similar control over less hostile planets. The idea that a species could survive, learn, and dominate a Class-15 Deathworld suggested potential for conquest far beyond previous imagination. Fear spread not because humans were violent, but because they were intelligent, adaptable, and relentless, capable of taking impossible odds and steadily turning them into success. Within the Deathworld, humans continued consolidating control, establishing secure zones for habitation, resource collection, and research. Predator territories were carefully monitored and partially managed. Unstable terrain was stabilized temporarily, and weather patterns were recorded and influenced where possible. The planet that had once controlled everything was now reacting to human activity rather than dictating it, a reversal that would have been unthinkable only months earlier. By the end of this period, humans had gone from survival specialists to planetary managers. Every step of their progress was measured, deliberate, and effective. Alien civilizations watched in awe and growing apprehension. The humans' achievements forced the galaxy to reconsider assumptions about survival, adaptability, and power, and the realization became clear. The Deathworld once believed unbeatable, was now a proving ground for humanity, and the galaxy had just witnessed a species redefine what it meant to survive, conquer, and thrive under absolute danger. Humans had survived where no one else could, but survival was no longer enough. The Class-15 Deathworld that had once crushed every intruder now bore signs of transformation. Once violent storms were partially redirected by human shielding. Unstable terrain had been reinforced or bypassed with engineering ingenuity, and apex predators had altered their behavior, avoiding human zones. The planet that had ruled through chaos was now responding to the humans' presence. The base had expanded into a network of modular habitats, connected by monitored supply lines, each structure engineered to withstand earthquakes, volcanic surges, and corrosive rains. Humans had created a living system that allowed movement across the most dangerous regions without immediate risk. Energy grids captured geothermal and spore-derived power. Automated defenses monitored predator activity, and research labs studied both the environment and its inhabitants, turning every hazard into a source of knowledge. Predators that had once dominated the land had learned caution. Some retreated entirely, others migrated to less human-influenced areas. Humans did not kill indiscriminately. Instead, they managed populations strategically, turning the planet's natural threats into controlled variables. Alien scientists observing from afar were stunned. No species had ever combined survival, intelligence, and environmental manipulation to such a degree. It was not brute conquest, but a transformation imposed through understanding and adaptation. Even the planet's geophysical systems began showing signs of human influence. Small-scale earthquakes were absorbed by engineered stabilizers. Rivers were redirected into predictable channels. And volcanic activity near human zones was used as a power source rather than a threat. The Deathworld's chaotic systems were no longer completely autonomous. They had begun to bend to the rhythm of human presence. And the very idea of a Class-15 Deathworld as an unbeatable hazard was being rewritten. Humans continued their research, mapping every ecosystem, monitoring predator and prey movements, and cataloging plants, microbes, and minerals for potential use. Each study increased their ability to anticipate danger and control outcomes. Every attack, storm, or geophysical anomaly was treated as data, and every success reinforced human confidence. The Deathworld, once indifferent and lethal, now seemed to recognize the humans as a force it could not immediately overwhelm. News of their success spread slowly but inevitably, and across the galaxy, species realized that humans had done the impossible. They had not just survived a Class-15 Deathworld. They had adapted, managed, and partially controlled it. The Council and other civilizations watched in awe and fear, understanding that humans had proven themselves capable of thriving under conditions designed to ensure death. A species that could bend a planet's hostile systems to its will was a species that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Within the base, humans were aware of the magnitude of their achievement, but remained practical. They did not celebrate recklessly. Instead, they analyzed, optimized, and expanded their operations. The Deathworld was no longer a random killer, but a landscape of challenge and opportunity. And humans had learned to live in, exploit, and adapt to its every threat. Their presence reshaped predator territories, geophysical activity, and even weather patterns, creating controlled zones of relative safety where none had existed before. By the final weeks of the mission, the planet had fundamentally changed. Its once unpredictable hazards had become partially manageable. Its ecosystems were responding to human influence, and apex predators had been contained or displaced. What had been a place of death and destruction was now a place that humans could navigate, learn from, and even utilize. The planet's natural defenses had been partially neutralized through patience, intelligence, and adaptation. When reports were sent back to the Galactic Council, the tone was factual, almost understated, yet the implication was profound. Humans had achieved what no species before them could. The Deathworld had met its match, and its reputation as an untouchable force of nature had been permanently altered. Across star systems, scientists, military strategists, and leaders understood a new reality. A species capable of surviving, learning, and controlling a Class-15 Deathworld could potentially survive anywhere. The final realization settled quietly but powerfully across the galaxy. The Death World had not conquered humanity. It had underestimated them. Its storms, predators, and geological fury had been met with intelligence, adaptability, and relentless persistence. And in that confrontation, the planet itself had suffered the first consequence of encountering a species it could not kill. The humans had arrived, endured, and transformed the Death World, leaving one undeniable truth. The planet regretted ever meeting them.